So, with the penultimate episode of Star Trek Picard Season 2, I find myself once again making another addendum video, where I point out some of the things that I just didn't have time to cover in my original review, and to delve a little deeper into some of the issues with the episode. Now, we have the line from 7 of 9, again an unexpected rhyme, I do apologise, where she tells Raffi the reasons why she didn't enlist in Starfleet, or at least couldn't enlist in Starfleet. It was because Starfleet was very, very naughty, very bad people, and wouldn't let her join Starfleet due to the fact that she is an ex-Borg. However, the writers don't seem to be following the continuity of their own show, because as we saw in Picard Season 1, when we revisit the character of Icheb is clearly a Starfleet officer. He's wearing a uniform. He's seemingly a lieutenant. He was liberated by the crew of the Voyager, spent many years improving himself in every aspect, and 7 of 9 even mentored this character. Unfortunately, when we meet Icheb in this scenario, he's being brutally tortured and harvested for his Borg parts. Now, we all remember that scene. It wasn't a great scene. It was hugely disrespectful to the character of Icheb. I never agreed with it. I never liked it. And I thought it was a piss-poor decision from the writing team. To me, it was just cheap and lousy. Back to 7 of 9. And her not being allowed into Starfleet, even with Admiral Janeway putting her career on the line, which is what admirals do in Picard. I don't know whether you've noticed. Admirals put their career on the line. I'm surprised Starfleet at that point didn't accept her resignation, because she says, I'm going to resign if you don't let 7 in Starfleet. But Starfleet didn't let 7 in Starfleet, but they did let Icheb. This is ridiculous. Not only does this blatantly disregard everything that 7 of 9 has done throughout the entire history of her time on Voyager, I find it highly unlikely that she would not be in Starfleet in some capacity. But of course, the creators of this show wanted her to be a Fenris Ranger and a badass, which in no way resembled her character from Star Trek Voyager. This is not 7 of 9. On to the next issue, which again involves 7 of 9, and she beams some Borgified soldiers into the walls of Chateau Picard. So, essentially, they've become part of the wall. Now, this does raise a few questions. Why did she choose to beam them into walls? Why did she choose to beam them directly next to Not Laris and Jean-Luc Picard? And also, how long are these guys actually part of the wall? Because surely these tunnels are unknown to anyone who buys the house unless they know to turn the little seal on the bookcase. So these Borg are now part and parcel of the house. Nobody spotted them throughout the entire 400 years between 2024 and 2501, or whatever the fuck the date is in Star Trek Picard. This would obviously create quite the problem with regards to the butterfly effect. But it's okay, because the writers haven't actually paid any attention to that for quite a few episodes. Also, additionally with this scene, why did 7 of 9 not beam Picard and Not Laris back to the ship? I mean, she transported some Borgified soldiers to the exact location where Picard and Laris were, but she didn't think to beam them out of there, knowing that the Borg are attacking Chateau Picard. It, again, makes absolutely no sense. Further to the issues with 7 of 9, I'd like to introduce our friend Raffi into the scene. Now, 7 and Raffi are facing quite the trek back to the ship. I covered this somewhat in my review. However, they appear to have complete plot armor when it comes to these Borg soldiers that are shooting at them. And there are quite a few of them in the fields. Now, call me stupid if you wish, but I highly doubt that these two individuals managed to trek across the vineyards of Chateau Picard and not get hit by a single bullet, because as we saw later in the episode, they're back on the ship and everything's fine. It also points to some exceptionally bad writing. The writers had them reel off this whole dialogue about, we're not going to make it through this, we're not going to make it. And suddenly, yep, they're fine, everything's fine. I just wanted to make a quick note on just how dark all of these episodes are. You can barely see a thing. It's like watching the Game of Thrones episode with the Night King's attack on Winterfell. You couldn't see anything, and this episode is absolutely no different. Jurati activates the ECH, which we used to think stood for Emergency Command Hologram. However, of course, in New Trek, it stands for Emergency Combat Hologram. Now, Elnor is, of course, wearing a mobile emitter, similar to the one that the Doctor had. So this is presumably to keep him separate from the ship's systems. However, he was generated from the ship's systems, but the ship is from the Confederation timeline. So Voyager would never have gotten the technology for the Doctor's mobile emitter. So how do they have this technology? And oh my God, I've got a headache already. Now, I mentioned this in my review previously that Not Laris's gun was shot by the guy she shot that fell backwards and sprayed bullets up into the air. However, he was from an elevated position and she was on the lower level and he fell backwards, shot upwards, and somehow her gun got shot. The guy who just got shot clearly had a much better aim randomly firing than the entire field of stormtroopers that surround Chateau Picard. My next issue is focused on the future of the Borg Collective. Now, Jurati, after managing to convince the Borg Queen to not randomly assimilate people, to be a little bit more discriminatory when it comes to assimilation, no one in the history of Star Trek has ever been able to convince the Borg of anything, because they have a singular will to assimilate all life in existence, to grow their collective. We're told that the Queen is, in fact, lonely, and she needs friends and loved ones. Now, the direction that the Borg are being taken, this is pretty much what you can expect from the Borg going forward.
We are the Borg. With your consent, you will be assimilated. Upon successful review of your references, we will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is optional. If you have time to spare, there is a survey. Thank you.
Now, throughout this episode, we have flashbacks, and these flashbacks tend to occur at the most inconvenient of times. Now, I covered in my Star Trek Discovery reviews, feel free to check those out on the channel. In moments of crisis, these crews, these characters that are written by complete hacks, just seem to randomly spurt off complete and utter nonsense about their tragic backstory. But with Picard, it's slightly different, because he seems to go into some sort of trance or a daydream. And then we see the flashbacks. In the middle of a crisis situation, they're being shot at, and Picard decides he needs to reminisce about the past and about what happened to his mother. This writing is incredibly poor, and as someone mentioned recently, so is the direction. It's pretty much like,
it would appear as if the current crisis situation means that I will be retreating into the depths of my mind and trying to remember what happened to my mother, because that is the most important thing right now, is for me to figure that out. It's not the crisis situation that has arisen, it is my past and my history. That is what is most important. Yes, I can feel it now. I'm heading backwards in time. Here I go. Oh, I'm back now. What's changed? Oh, that's right. Nothing's changed. I'm still in mortal danger. Yes, yes.
7 of 9, as we see, gets turned back into a Borg, with the implants being exactly the same as they were when she was deborgified in the first place, when she rejoined the human race and left the Borg collective. She has been reassimilated, reborgified, and her implants somehow match exactly as they did before. I mean, this is just a few of the remaining questions that we actually have with regards to this episode and the season so far. These include: what happened to this police officer that discovered the ship and had his spleen removed? Why has no one come to check on him? Where is he? What happened to him? When the Borg transport onto the La Sirena, they do not react in any way to Rios, the doctor lady, and her son, and allow them to simply run away. I mean, are they simply waiting for the Queen to come? Does the Queen activate their weaponry, or what's going on? When Rios abandons the ship and makes it back to the chateau, how did he get past all of the Borg that transported outside of the ship? At any point, did it occur to Not Laris to maybe, I don't know, use her own transporter to get herself and Picard back to the ship? I mean, she has a transporter. She just used it to transport Rios, the doctor lady, and her son back to her own apartment. It doesn't make any damn sense. Whenever one of these members of the retarded Picard squad take a Borg down, they don't pick up any of the Borg weaponry, any of the assault rifles, these things that could actually help them in their current situation. The Doctor from 2024 is once again able to use a piece of technology that she otherwise would have absolutely no idea how to use it. This is preposterous. It's ridiculous. When Soong throws the weapon that's about to explode up in the air just above Picard, Rios, and Not Laris, the weapon explodes and none of them get hurt. None of them in any way, shape or form. They're all just fine. How does this happen? How does that explosion not tear these people a new one? This episode is just rife with problems. It's possibly the poorest episode of the season. It's just that poorly written. No one gave any attention to any of the details in this episode, and it's just baffling beyond belief. I just cannot fathom how this story came together. What is going on? Oh. Now, we are one episode away from the climax of this season, if you can call it a climax. I think it's more of a death crawl. I'm not exactly certain where they're going to take the transition from Season 2 to Season 3. It's probably going to be a case of we say goodbye to the cast that was not working. Rios might stay in the past with Dr. Lady, impress her with his, all his technology, and Raffi probably gets trapped in the past. Yay! And Picard goes back to the future. No, I won't put it like that. That's far too respectful a quote for this show. He goes back to the 25th century without most of the crew. We already know Jurati's going off to be a Borg, and we are going to be having the original Next Gen cast back for Season 3, where they will probably absolutely obliterate the rest of the Next Generation characters and make us feel complete and utter pity for their sorry asses being in this utter shit show. Quite honestly, what has Star Trek Picard got left to offer other than more of the same? It's been in the back of my mind for the last few episodes that this season has absolutely no direction. It was poorly conceived, poorly planned, and it's almost like the writers have no idea where to go next. I remember a time when Star Trek was written by people who cared, by people who sculpted and moulded rich, diverse, interesting characters and situations and scenarios that were planned out, thought about, contemplated. But with this, all I see is a mess of inconsistency, and most of all, a mess of disrespect for a franchise that gave it life, that used to be our friend, our childhood, our franchise. And to the absolute hacks who created and continue to run this show, like the Borgified soldiers in this mess of an episode, you have really missed the mark. Shame on you.